Okay, so now I'm going to start heat treat. Before I start working on the 5 knife blades that I've just made, and it's been quite a number of hours worth of work, from forging to grinding and so on. I don't want to risk ruining all that work, so heat treating is always the part where, unless you have a real nice oven that's temperature controlled and you know absolutely everything, it can be a bit of a nerve-wracking experience. And I think I've got the process down for knives fairly well, where I know what size knives and cross sections that I'm dealing with. But doing such thin, small blades here, I'm a bit concerned. So what I decided to do is quickly grind out a small, thin blade, thinner than any of the other blades, and to go ahead and try this. The other thing is, I'm not exactly sure how the electric induction forge is going to work for this, because the way it works is you have eddy currents from the coil that cause movement, or you have movement or eddy currents in the cross section of the metal that you're passing near through the coil, and this is causing the heat. Depending on the frequency, depends how deep or how close to the surface, but I think the main thing is that the larger the cross section, it tends to heat faster. If you have a thinner cross section, it doesn't heat as much, and I'm not even sure that I'm going to be able to get enough heat into this thin cross section and be able to keep it there long enough to get sufficient heat to then come on over and quench it. Before I do anything else, one of the first things that you need to do, this is an O1 tool steel, so you quench it in oil. People use all different kinds of oils. I'm just using grapeseed oil. No particular reason. It's what I have. I don't like the smell of motor oil. It makes me think when I get the smoke that I'm breathing in something toxic. Anyway, so the first thing I'm going to do is heat the oil. And I'm going to do that just by taking a piece of steel, and I want to heat it up to the oil up to say 150 degrees or so it's not cold. This is just in the house, so it's fairly cold. I get this good and hot, take this into the oil here, stir it around, warm up the oil a little bit. Okay, that's already hot enough. It's hot, or it's warm. It's not uncomfortable for me to put my finger in. That's going to be about the right temperature. So from here, I'm going to go ahead and heat up my test part and try it out. And the way I heat it up too, I've got to be careful, because if I heat it up unevenly in one side versus the other, it can warp just from that. So I'm just going to kind of take it easy here and see what I'm going to do. Yeah, see, that's not even really imparting heat like this. I know if I turn it 90 degrees, it's going to heat up much faster. That's just my experience with the way this works. Yeah, so I can see here I'm able to get good heat throughout, but I'm not really getting it to the tip. So I'm a little bit concerned about that. I think what I'm going to do here is take a magnet and see what kind of so I have it on the tip and not here. Actually, this seems to be working fairly well. Go ahead and quench it in the oil. I'm tempted to move it around. Really shouldn't move it back and forth. Okay, so now, is it warped? Yes, it is. I don't know if it's warped because of the way I moved it sideways, or it's very thin. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it and do a file test on it and see how hard it is, and see if it hardens sufficiently enough. Okay, so it looks like it's nicely hardened. I should really try the tip though. Okay, so that's interesting. I think the answer is here. I can't do this with the induction forge. I don't have even heating. I got a little bit of warpage. It's very interesting. One side of the blade is hard enough that the file skates across, and the other side is soft enough that I can actually, leave some marks on it. I really don't think I would have any trouble with a piece like this wedge. Chisel, but I'm not going to chance it. I have to do the propane forge for one thing. I'm going to do it for all, and so that's just what I'm going to do. I can soak them all, pull each one out, and then quench each one subsequently, and then I think I'll feel better about that. Again, it's not worth ruining the pieces just to try to save a little time here. So you cancel out all the other work that you did. So, all right. Okay, so this is my gas propane forge, and it's fairly massive for what I need it for. I think like any new knife maker, at least me, I was like, yeah, I can make a sword with this thing, but the reality is I'm probably never going to do that, and it's massive overkill for what I need. What I'd be much more efficient is have a small one, but this was made out of a small hot water heater. It's a 2-burner forge, and then what I've done is I've just stuffed the back half of this with more ceramic wool so that it's more insulative, and I can heat the front half up quicker. So I guess what I'm finding is just like knife making, the induction forge is great for forging. It makes that process go very fast, so I don't have to wait 5 minutes between hammering to get the work back up to temperature. It's just seconds. And for heat treating, well, I need to use this, and sometime I'll, when I can afford it, I'll buy an oven, heat treating oven, and then I won't need this, and it'll be much more efficient. But for today, I'm going to use this, and I don't have any jigs, so I'm probably going to go weld some jigs together so that I can put those 5 pieces in here and be able to get them in and out easily. And for now, I'm just going to turn it on and let it come up to temperature. It's going to take a good, 10-15 minutes for this thing to get up to temperature. So I'll go ahead and light it, and I'll move on to the other. Alright, so it's going. I'm going to go over now and weld together some jigs, and then we'll come over and we'll get the 5 blades in here and soaking, and I'll treat it sort of like a heat treating oven, where I'll bring them up to a sort of just like a barely deep red and let it soak there for a good 10 minutes, and then bring it up to bright cherry red. Let it soak for a couple minutes, and then I'll pull them out each one, and I'll dunk them into the oil and quench them, and then we'll go there right into the tempering. So for now I'm going to go over and do a little bit of welding, and then we'll come back to this. Real quick, I'm going to make a jig to hold the 5 pieces in the propane forge, so that the blade tips are up off the bottom. There's the air can circulate around the bottom of it, and I don't have anything like that, so I'm just going to take a little piece of metal rod and weld it to the base here, and it should be real quick here. So. It's not going to be beautiful, but it'll work. 1, 2, 3. Pliers too close, so then the pliers heat up. Okay, so got the basic piece right here. A little bit longer than we need it to be. This thing will just literally melt the steel right in half. Side. Don't need it to be quite this long. I got a rainstorm coming. Alright, so pretty good. I'm just going to flatten this out a little bit. Okay, not pretty, but get the idea. Have a little jig with 6 of these, or 5 of these things that the pieces can sit in. Obviously the blade end will sit up like that. So that's what I'm going to do. I'll weld that together real quick and we'll be good to go. Alright, I got my welding helmet. Go ahead and weld this up. Alright, simple enough. It doesn't need to be beautiful, it just needs to hold. So there we go. We got our little jig made, and that'll allow us to support our blades in the propane forge. Okay, so we have our it's hot. We have our jig, we have our blades, and our forge is definitely up to temperature. It's hot even to be next to. So I'm going to go ahead and put these pieces in here. Actually, first I'm going to check the temperature of the forge. I'm going to put the most delicate ones toward the center, or actually towards the left side, I think. It's just the way this forge works. I have an idea of, you know, how the forge is working. I prefer these blades not to be directly into the blast of the burner. got them all stacked nicely in there. All 5 of those. So I'm going to go ahead and close the door. Yeah, I actually don't like the way the tip of that one's sticking in here. I'm going to pull this back. Go ahead and let these soak, and I'm going to be able to look directly into there. I'm not going to put the camera up close because the heat is rather intense. It'll probably damage the camera. Probably what I'll end up doing is pushing this back much further into the back so the tips are all beyond where the blade is, or where the flame is. I'm going to go ahead and do that now, actually. Now they're all back behind the flame. Don't have the flame blowing on them. Just going to go ahead and let this heat up. Okay, so these have been soaking for several minutes, maybe 10 minutes now, and I think you might be able to see in a little bit. You can see that they're glowing pretty bright red. I'm going to take probably the easiest one to start with, which is going to be the angled chisel, and I'm going to heat treat that one first. I'm going to quench it. Bright red, go right in there like that. Not going to move it around, just dunk it under. Leave it in there. Now ideally, I'd leave this in a quenching oil until it was down to a pretty low temperature and put it right into tempering oven. Got another little jig here. I'm going to let it cool down just a little bit in air. You don't want to quench it in. You don't want to quench it in water. So I'm going to go put that one in a tempering oven right now. Tempering oven is right now set up at about 350 degrees, and so I'm gonna go do that right now. As soon as you get it quenched and cooled down, it should go into the tempering oven. Okay, so I'm going to do the second one right now. In case you're wondering, so every time I dunk something into the oil, it's getting hotter in such a small amount, raises the temperature. I've got a ton of expired grapeseed oil, so I just keep changing it and getting it to the right temperature for each quench. Normally it makes sense to have a much bigger reservoir so you're not bringing the temperature way up. I'm going to go take this blade and put it over into the tempering oven right now. So I'm going to do the third blade. I switched to one of my larger reservoirs for oil because I really need to submerge the entire blade. The last one didn't work out quite so well, so I'm going to just be able to submerge the entire thing this way. Take the chip carving knife this time, straight down in, all the way down in. Much better. Much better. All right, 4th, 9th. So far, none of these blades have warped or cracked. They're all perfect, so it's definitely a good decision to go this way, soak them in there. Okay, into the tempering oven with this one. Okay, so we have one final blade. blade I was most worried about. It was the thinnest. It has the traditional sort of pocket knife shape where it has the belly on the bottom curving up and then a straight top to a point. And so if this one made it without warping, perfect. We are set. No cracks. Very happy. So this was excellent. Alright, over to the tempering oven for the last one. And now what I'm going to do is I'll be tempering twice at 350 degrees Fahrenheit. It'll sit in there for an hour. I'll let it cool down to room temperature, and then I'll put it back in again for a second hour, 350 degrees. So I decided to bump up the temperature to, I don't know, I think I'd feel more comfortable with 400 instead of 350. 350 would give me a Rockwell hardness of around 62, and that I think is a bit too hard. I mean, on a knife edge or something like that, that's nice, but these blades are so small, and I think they're so thin that putting a fair amount of force on them might snap the blade. So I'm going to put them up. I'm going to put up at 400 and double temper that for an hour each, and that should bring the Rockwell hardness down to around 60 or a little bit under. And I think that's probably a better bet for this purpose. And we'll see. Maybe in use it's too hard and it'll snap. Maybe it needs to be something like 56, 58 or something like that. Maybe 60 is too hard. But in any case, that's what I'll try this time. 400 degrees, double tempered, and we'll come back afterwards and take a look and clean up the blades and see what we've got.
So here we see the 5 blades just after temper. Again, the blades have been tempered 3 times at 400 degrees Fahrenheit. So they heated up to temperature, went an hour, then cooled down to room temperature, which in Arizona here is like 110 degrees, 115 degrees, and then they went second round and third round. And so it's a little hard to see. The color here you can see on the more exposed pieces, you got a nice faint or light straw color. So that's, that tells me that the oven was set pretty accurately, because that's what you should expect for 400 degrees Fahrenheit.